All right, so cohesion. This is where we get a lot more granular. So this is where we bring in our hands and use them to memorize concepts. So lexical choice, or as we call it, LC cache, is basically around the way that we use text. We use words that kind of go together. So we use this hand gesture, sort of put your pinchy fingers together. That's collocation. Basically means these words go together. Simple examples would be like cookies and cream, never cream and cookies. But collocation is a bit bigger than that, and it sort of just means almost anything from the semantic field. Antonymy, spread your fingers far apart. These are words that are not synonymous. They're opposite, in fact. Ugly, beautiful, those kind of things would be antonyms. Synonymy, you're going to put your fingers quite close together. Those are all synonymous, so they go together. Hyponymy is sort of a hard one, but you're going to basically make an umbrella with your thumb and your forefinger and then let the other three hang down, because hyponymy is words and sort of subclasses of words. So you might have foods at the top, and then you might have, chicken, risotto, butter, those kind of things underneath. So that's a hyponymic relationship. All right, this is the super complicated one, which is why we have hand gestures as well, because keeping in mind, if there's one thing you're definitely allowed to bring into the exams, it is your hands. So it might be useful to use that as a memory aid. In the beginning, while we're going through this, it might be useful for you to get a soft felt tip pen and actually write some of these letters onto your hands and kind of use that. Maybe let it last for see how long it takes to wash off, but use that as a memory aid to kind of help you do it. But Cafe C CADRES, so cafe, a place you go to get coffee, C because there was a spare C, and CADRES, a cadre is like a group of soldiers, believe it or not. So not the best acronym, but the best I could do with the letters that we have. I'll go through each one in detail, and there'll be a hand sign to associate with that. And also, obviously, this is also picked up in the other videos as well around this concept. So these are all under the umbrella of cohesion and technically information flow, which is sort of, you use these strategies to change the way that your information flows. So this is kind of like if you've ever written a sentence and then sort of crossed it out and thought, oh, I could reword that. That's you changing the information flow of your text. So, all right, we're starting with clefting. It's horrible to know, but some children are born with hands like this, which are cleft. Means split, so you can get a cleft palate, cleft tongue, would have two parts, all those sort of things. So you make the little Star Trek sign, that reminds you of clefting. Basically for clefting, you start with a simple sentence. Mr. Kolber bored the students, he sure did. And then we split it into two clauses. So we can either do it with an it or with a WH, so we can do who, what, when, etc. But for this simple example, it was Mr. Kolber who bored the students. So we've sort of taken a simple sentence and we've broken it into two clauses. You could also add, I guess, a conjunction to make it a clear compound sentence, but we haven't done that yet. So what Mr. Kolber did was bore students. So again, we've sort of broken up the clauses to make it a bit more interesting and to put a clearer focus on, in this case, Mr. Kolber. Then, okay, adverbials. So for this, we actually flip our hand and look at the back, because adverbials add information to the verb. So most of our signs occur on the front, but on the back is adding in more information to those. And these are for, as it says, place, time, or manner. So we've got some examples there. If you think of good creative writing, like fantasy writing especially, they're going to use a lot of adverbials as a really neat way to add information without kind of doing a whole sentence describing those things individually. So, Bilbo Baggins ran super fast, or just fast, in the afternoon, yesterday, this evening, when I remembered. So all of those things can define the running that's occurring and give additional information to it. Then we've got front focus. Believe it or not, this hand sign is the single hand Auslan sign for F. So we remember front focus this way. So front focus is quite rare. Basically, our language is subject, verb, object. Front focus typically means you're moving the object to the front, or we can say broadly the main information to the front. So in this case, never forget our fallen soldiers. You can see we've sort of broken the rules of SVO, and so it makes it kind of a little bit more interesting to sort of mix up our information flow. Whereas the obvious way you would write that sentence is, our fallen soldiers we should never forget. And again, a hand sign kind of like that is the single-handed E for Auslan, so we use that to remember end focus. Then we've got conjunctions. So you're thinking of the little webbed parts of your hands. Those are the conjunctions of your hand. And conjunctions, as we know, can be subordinating or coordinating, so we're not going to go through that in great detail here. Then, cataphoric references. So you sort of move we picture A, B, C, and D. B, there's no referencing for, so we use that for substitution. But cataphoric is our third finger, and cataphoric is basically, as it says there, man walked in, his name was Mr. Colber. So we've got the referent first and then the proper noun after to make it simple. Then anaphoric is our first finger, that's the A, whereas the C was cataphoric and D is deixis. But the A is basically Mr. Colber appeared, he was tall. So it's a referent that goes back. Then deixis, our little finger in that hand sign, that one. Basically is something that you can only really work out from context or inference in written text. So if I said, hey, get that for me, I could be meaning a million different things, but if we were sitting in front of a pile of pens, then it would probably be quite clear what I'm talking about. Then we've got repetition. So for this one, you're just going to tap your thumb on the outside of your hand. Repetition's an easy one, so no explanation needed. What have we got here? Ellipsis. So I think in one of my videos I called it elision, which is not great. So the gap between your thumb and your four fingers is ellipsis. And it's basically when you take something out because it's sort of assumed. In this case, we and students is the bit that's been ellipted, or in the sentence you want to have it all known well before the end of your exam is sort of ellipted, because you kind of know, if we're talking about VCE English meta language, you probably know that we're talking about an end of year exam in that case. All right, substitution. So in that same hand sign that we use for a couple of different things, the B is removed and then substituted with something else. So very simple, VCE English language meta language becomes it. So you're shrinking a lot of things down. This is really important for academic writing especially. So if you're looking at a formal text, substitution will be used a lot. For us as English language students, we might have the name of someone in a transcript. It might be, Kevin Rudd, and we're going to always substitute that after we've used it once into K or KR to make it shorter and to save ourselves time. So that's substitution. All right, so if you want to pause that there, that's a list of ways that we use cohesion and coherence. All of these are being sort of covered, hopefully. But keeping in mind, you might want to have written some of those things on your hand and practice some of those structures of text types that we talked about. And this, I hope, is a pretty good introduction to cohesion and coherence. Cheers.